some hope to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. Glad to be with you as always for episode number 228, Fear in Politics, the Mineshaft Gap, coming to you on this Tuesday night, the 12th of August, 7:30 p.m. Central Time on all your social media channels. Welcome to all the new viewers and listeners who have been joining the community. Very glad that you're here. Thank you for giving us a try. These new participants, really a lot of them are showing up because you're reposting these links. So if you're watching this, just take a second, leave a comment, hit the like button, but repost the links because, as you know, we are not getting the El Primo treatment from these social media platforms. As I said, I was told I was the most shadow banned account on X. I don't know if I should be gratified or horrified by such things, but we're going to build this community nonetheless because this is politics. It's about politics, about building a political action community, organizing our neighborhoods, getting involved in our political parties, and saving the republic. And speaking of the republic, good morning, Tanner.
Good morning.
You had a very interesting comment recently. Was it on the last podcast?
Yeah.
You talked about going down and visiting the grave of President Abraham Lincoln. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And you were disturbed. You had bought some biographies of the president.
Almost bought.
So you were reading they have like a little knick-knack store there or something?
Yeah. Well, it was near his house. I had messed up and said the grave, but near his house in Springfield, he had a little knick-knack shop of a bunch of Abraham Lincoln memorabilia.
And they were saying that President Lincoln saved the democracy.
Yep. Every single biography I picked up, it stressed how he was the savior to the democracy.
Well, that made me think about another movie that maybe someday you could put on your movie list if you haven't seen it already. Have you ever watched the movie Saving Private Ryan?
I have. Yes.
You have watched that?
I have seen that. I'd have to rewatch it because I definitely watched it when I was much younger and
Who
I didn't
did that
understand
to you?
it.
That was mean.
Dude, I went over to my friend's house and they showed me the boy in the striped pajamas when I was 11. So,
that can lead to some post-traumatic stress disorder. If you haven't seen Saving Private Ryan, it is a gripping cinematic masterpiece detailing the invasion of Fortress Europe on June 6, 1944 by the Allied United Nations in an effort to topple the Nazi regime in Germany. And the premise of the movie was about a family of 4 sons, and 3 of them died, and this was figured out in Washington. And the one son that was left, Private Ryan, the hierarchy of the military decided to go save this young man because they thought that for a mother losing 3 sons was enough. And I remembered this scene where I think the character was General George Marshall, read to his subordinates a letter written by Lincoln, and it goes as follows. Dear Madam, I have been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, in the solemn pride that must be yours, to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. What a wordsmith.
He was so good at writing. That is one thing I learned about him. He was a master with words.
I mean, I'm pretty good at it, but that leaves me in the dust, baby.
So David sent me this. I don't even remember what night it was, but he just randomly texted it to me and said, "Hey, read this." And I was almost moved to tears reading this, just because you had sent me the screenshot of the actual like the actual writing, and
Right.
that made me realize that he hand wrote that.
Why don't you put it up there? It's right on
Yeah,
the script there, young man.
yeah.
There
There you
it
guys go.
is. He actually took the time, and this was in a different time.
He was leading us. I mean, when was this dated? It was, I assume, after the
Well,
Civil War.
no, it was during the war. It's
During the
somewhere
war.
between 1861. He was dead in 1865. So it's somewhere between 61 and 65. Oh, it's dated right on there. November 21st, 1864.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, see, I was just so impressed because I don't think a single president would do like
I think certain presidents send correspondence, but the depth of this writing, its eloquence, its poetry is so profound. I pray that our Heavenly Father, now this is from a president that believes in God. I pray, I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. I didn't work on it for a month. That just came out naturally.
yeah.
So this guy was a poet, creative in the extreme, but we're getting caught in the beauty of the uh, correspondence. Of course, leaving out the bereavement, which is mind-boggling. But we talked about that all of these books that you had read by these modern scholars talked about he saved the democracy, but that's not what he says in this letter. In this letter, he says, "But I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the republic they died to save." He could have said the democracy. He didn't.
No, he didn't.
So this is I was thinking about what you had said on that podcast, and I said that was a great insight. And then I remembered this letter, which is featured in Saving Private Ryan, and I looked it up, and I knew it. I mean, it's not the first time I'd looked for it. It's just a but it's a fantastic. It's if you go find this letter, it's called the Bixby Letter. If you go find this, you can find it. You can Google it up. Every line is filled with meaning. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any words of mine that should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. That is such a beautiful line.
Yeah, didn't Abe Lincoln, he lost 4 of his kids, I'm pretty sure. It was 4 of the 5, right?
I don't know. I don't know that what the history. I know that he lost at least one child. I know he lost to disease, which is implicated in some mental health problems for his wife and for him.
Yeah.
But moving right along, you can
It
break
was
in if
4 children, 3 died. Robert was the only one that lived to adulthood. So, Abraham Lincoln understood the best. You know, he did understand the pain that that mother was going through.
yes. For those of you out there who have buried children, I don't know what that's like. It hasn't happened to me, and I got a lot of them. And I think about it from time to time. What would be my response to such a uh, event in my life? And I'm going to tell you, I'm walking by faith and not by sight, and I accept what happens in my life. I don't fight against it. That is not to say I don't have human reactions, because I do, but those human reactions give me a chance to work on my faith. And I know that there's a lot of people, even in my own life, that that consider this to be crazy, but life is an experiment, like we were talking about your daughter crawling along and putting everything in her mouth.
Yeah.
I'm just crawling along, putting everything in my mouth, and what I found was tasted the best was faith in God, and, it has served me. Uh, my faith has served me so that my life is constantly improving, my conduct is improving, my well-being is improving, my willingness to sacrifice for the republic has, there's no way to quantify how that changed over the course of the last 20 years of my life. So we're gonna stick with, that in the Penn family, but then there's people. What a great segue. What a great that just happened just completely organically. Because what we're gonna talk about now is fear in politics and the mineshaft gap, which is really about science. And, I would like to play number 2 first, please.
We are going big on digital assets. So, Trump administration has made digital assets a priority. Past administration starved and almost made extinct a lot of these companies and pushed it offshore. So what we want to do is apply the highest U.S. regulatory and AML standards to digital assets, especially.
So this is, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who to me seems to be one of the more competent figures in the Trump administration, talking about how, President Trump and the administration is going, I think he said, all in on digital assets. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Something like that,
Yep.
right?
Going all in.
And this is, something of great concern to me. Uh, Secretary Bessent talked about how the previous administrations, the regulations, had pushed these digital asset companies offshore, that they want to they're codifying rules. They just passed something called the Genius Act, which one of its primary proponents was Tom Emmer here from CD6 in Minnesota. We played a clip of him shilling for the crypto industry, remember, several weeks ago?
Yep.
And my problem with this is it's technology that I don't understand, you don't understand, Scott Bessent doesn't understand, Donald Trump doesn't understand, and neither does Tom Emmer. Nobody understands this technology fully, and what we seem to me to be doing is putting in place a new regime of currency, and we have Donald Trump saying there'll never be a central bank digital currency in an executive order, which is, like a piece of toilet paper because it's going to go right down, where if we get a Democrat regime in just 3.5 years. So, there has to be legislation that would prevent a digital currency, a central bank digital currency, or in other words, the US dollar replaced by digital currency, which has already happened in China. In China, there is no more paper money. Everything is run through a platform called WeChat. You go there and you want to make change. Hey, baby, there's no change. It's all digital all the time.
I don't know if this is inappropriate, but I want to read something that this dawns on me. You
Go
know
ahead.
the Unabomber Manifesto?
I do.
So, bullet point number 50, he talks about the conservatives are fools. They whine about the decay of traditional values, yet they enthusiastically support technological progress and economic growth. Apparently, it never occurs to them that you can't make rapid, drastic changes in the technology and the economy of a society without causing rapid changes in all other aspects of the society as well, and that such rapid changes inevitably break down traditional values.
And this is just one of those days, and you can look this up, and I'm not sure if this is true, but I think Ted Kaczynski may have studied at MIT under John G. Trump,
Yeah.
President Trump's uncle. I'm not sure if that's correct. I might just be making it up, but I think he was at a MIT and he either studied with or under John Trump, which was Trump's uncle. And I want to talk about this technology change because President Trump seems to be, or at least his presentation is, he's for the American people. He's for the people. He's for the republic. He's for traditional values. And as Tanner just pointed out, when you mess with something as fundamental as the cash, you're going to change everything. And that's what they're doing. And the presumption is here it's going to be all about freedom, and it could be, and we're going to get to organizing here in a second, because it's only going to be for us if we're in the game. If we're playing, I'm talking about the people in the street. If we elect leaders that are going to protect us from these technocrats, and we require people that want to protect us, because, you know, Donald Trump, love him, hate him, whatever, he seems to me to have a phenomenal love of the scientific. He talks about it all the time, and I was thinking, why would that be? You're a business guy, you're an athlete, allegedly, likes to think of himself as an athlete. He's a Republican and for the Republic. Well, what's going on here? And it turns out that his uncle, John G. Trump, taught at MIT for like 35, 40 years. And actually, this guy, John G. Trump, was involved. This is President Trump's uncle, was involved in first the creation of radar during World War II. But what really made this guy famous was high voltage generators, which created X rays, which were then turned into X ray machines for X ray therapy to work and to save and to try to ameliorate people that came in with cancer. And he had a clinic that, experimented on thousands and thousands of sufferers of cancer where they, irradiated these tumors with X rays. And just so you know, there's two kinds of ways to do this. There's with these high voltage generators to make X-rays, and then there's using cobalt. Same idea, disrupting the um, reproduction of cancerous cells by devastating their reproductive capacity with these high energy beams. And it does work, I mean, it does. There is some efficacy to this, not always. And you can imagine the experiments that John G. Trump did when they didn't know what they were doing. I'm sure a lot of people got screwed up with them trying to figure out dosages and depths and all the different things that are involved in it. Was I right about Kaczynski and Trump?
It says that it was a claim made, but they can't find any records at MIT saying that Ted attended classes there. So I think no.
Urban legend.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you to check.
Yeah, because it looks like he got his PhD in mathematics at the University of Michigan.
Point being, thank you for checking.
Yeah.
We're trying to be much more careful about our presentation of information because it's difficult to get your hands around what happened. Even if it said, yes, he was a student of President Trump's uncle, how would we know? Were we in the classroom with them?
Yeah.
See, we're in a spot here. But we do know that John G. Trump, the uncle of President Trump, was famous. He owned the first, he was a partner he was involved in the first venture capital fund, which formed right after World War II. He had a huge company that built these X ray machines for both scientific research and also for medical uh, technique. And he was probably famously wealthy. That I don't know. But could you imagine you're growing up and your uncle cured cancer? Because that's how this got fenced, right back in the 50s and 60s. I mean, here comes this X ray machine. Because before that, hey, you went there and they said, Avidazane, my friend. And now they had a treatment. I mean, they had a treatment where people could go and some of them survived. And so here's little President Donald Trump hanging out with his uncle, and Unc cured cancer. I mean, that would make you really. Plus, he grew up in the 50s and 60s, which was the peak time of, man, if it's scientific, it's good. So this is in President Trump's head. And
In
this,
some respects, like thank God for it, you know? Like I always respect it because look at this. We're sitting in a room Tuesday morning, David. We're reaching so many ears and so many people thanks to science. So it is really a mixed bag.
I say all the time, I'm not anti-science. I just think that we've got an ideological struggle between the scientific community, which is very dismissive of faith in general, and the faith community, which, is given over to sin and cooperating with the communists. And what's getting lost here is the faith. And when we lose that, we have a breakdown. Again, like Kaczynski said, when you change things of this nature, of this depth, and you remove them, you're taking out a fundamental, building block of society, and you get, the kind of awful results. Though I'm not saying they're all due to a decline in faith, but, from my perspective, a lot of it is. The whole point of faith is to be self-regulating. Not the whole point, again, cognitive distortion, a very critical part of faith is to be self-governing. If my relationship is with God and I'm trying to live up to that standard of conduct and life, I certainly don't need, the state of Minnesota, for example, telling me what to do because God's law is so far above man's law. There's just no comparison. And for those of us that are involved in legal matters and understand the ethical implications of legal disputes and how juries work and how judges work and how the law work, which I do, fortunately or unfortunately, I have had those experiences and I'm continuing to have those experiences. And then when I do it, just to share with you, I default to whatever God's will is, that's what it's going to be. And I'm okay with that. But what I see happening is this administration is ushering in a digital technology that they don't understand, we don't understand, somebody understands it, and just a couple of turns of the screwdriver, and we're all in prison, and I'm going to share with you why. A digital currency can be turned off. You're not supposed to go 15 minutes from your house to save the planet from climate change. You go 60 minutes from your house, your digital currency doesn't work. Again, this system is already fully in place in a country of 1.5 billion people, which is China. It is fully implemented. There's no cash transactions in China anymore. Think about what that means. And of course, people say, oh, it's so convenient. Yeah, well, Royce White says we're going to give up our freedom for convenience. And there it is. But the driving factor of this, I think, for the Trump administration is they see other countries, competitors, going digital in their currency, and there's a lot of money to be made here. So there's a gap that they want to close. They want to close. And this gap is about science and funding, because you don't really call it a faith gap. Like let's say you and I are sitting around the campfire and we're talking. And you look at me and you go, wow, you have a lot of faith. Well, yes, I do, Tanner. And you go, well, I'd like to get that. Well, we have a faith gap, but there's no funding that could ameliorate that gap. Only your work and your discipline to discover faith for yourself. And furthermore, nobody is going to destroy me around that campfire because of a faith gap. I guess the case could be made is that people that have stronger faith, tribes, groups that have stronger faith, can overwhelm groups that are less faithful. I mean, maybe. And guess what? That's exactly where technology comes in. Technology, the tree, the knowledge of good and evil, wisdom, which in Hebrew is a female word, wisdom, a female noun, wisdom. It's a way to equalize, the great equalizer between the strong and the weak, technology. Boy, I didn't know I was going to go down this rabbit hole this morning. But let's watch the prototype explanation. And the point of this is from a movie, Dr. Strangelove. We played many clips from Dr. Strangelove. It's a genius movie, 1963. This should sound insane. The point of this clip is that it's insane, it's comedy, but the point is the missile gap that George C. Scott is going to talk about is a gap, a funding gap, a science gap, which is exactly what's driving our politics to this very day. This started during World War II and the development of what? on not daisies and roses, the development of the atomic bomb. The bomb had to be developed because the Germans might get one. This gap in military technology goes way back, and it's driving all of our politics, all of our scientific research, and most of our budgets. Let's listen to number one.
I would think that possibly 100 years.
You mean people could actually stay down there for 100 years?
It would not be difficult, my Führer. Nuclear reactors could... I'm sorry, Mr. President. Nuclear reactors could provide power almost indefinitely. Greenhouses could maintain plant life. Animals could be bred and slaughtered. Quick survey would have to be made of all the available mine sites in the country. But I would guess that dwelling space for several 100,000 of our people could easily be provided.
Well, I would hate to have to decide who stays up and who goes down.
Well, that would not be necessary, Mr. President. Could easily be accomplished with a computer. And the computer could be set and programmed to accept factors from youth, health, sexual fertility, intelligence, and a cross-section of necessary skills. Of course, it would be absolutely vital that our top government and military men be included to foster and impart the required principles of leadership and tradition. Actually, they would breed prodigiously, eh? There would be much time and little to do. But with the proper breeding techniques and a ratio of, say, 10 females to each male, I would guess that they could then work their way back to the present gross national product within, say, 20 years.
But look here, Doctor, wouldn't this nucleus of survivors be so grief-stricken and anguished that they'd, well, envy the dead and not want to go on living?
No, sir. Excuse me. Also, when they go down into the mine, everyone would still be alive. There will be no shocking memories. And the prevailing motion will be one of nostalgia for those left behind, combined with a spirit of bold curiosity for the adventure ahead.
Doctor, you mentioned the ratio of 10 women to each man. Wouldn't that necessitate the abandonment of the so-called monogamous sexual relationship? I mean, as far as men were concerned.
Regrettably, yes. But it is, a sacrifice required for the future of the human race. I hasten to add that since each man will be required to do prodigious service along these lines, the women will have to be selected for their sexual characteristics, which will have to be of a highly stimulating nature.
I must confess, you have an astonishingly good idea there, Doctor.
Thank you, sir.
I think we ought to look at this from the military point of view. I mean, supposing the Ruskies stashed away some big bomb, see, and we didn't. When they come out in 100 years, they could take over.
I agree, Mr. President. In fact, they might even try an immediate sneak attack so they could take over our mineshaft space.
Yeah, I think it'd be extremely naive of us, Mr. President, to imagine that these new developments are going to cause any change in Soviet expansionist policy. I mean, we must be increasingly on the alert to prevent them from taking over other mineshaft space in order to breed more prodigiously than we do, thus knocking us out in superior numbers when we emerge. Mr. President, we must not allow a mineshaft...
Well, there it is. That's what's driving a lot of our politics. And we, the people, are sitting down here, as my friend, I said, Dave Kylo calls us the mud people. We're sitting down here in the mud trying to pay our bills and earn our daily bread. And who gets into these roles to sit in a room, the Situation Room, in this case with President Miffley, and these are the graduates of our elite institutions who are schooled up in the secular humanist tradition, generally not people of faith, people of science, because it's self-selecting. If I showed up there and they said, "What drives you?" I go, "I walk by faith and not by sight." They're probably going to say, "Hey, thanks for coming in," because they're not looking for people like me. Even in this administration, right now, they're not looking for people of faith, generally speaking, to fill these roles. They're just not. And the government is so big, we're talking about millions and millions of people hiring and firing. I'm not saying at the top there isn't a little bit more receptivity because we've seen it. President Trump's allowing government employees to talk to each other about faith, to try to convert each other. We got Secretary Kennedy in there talking about different kinds of well-being. There's changes, but to change the whole system, it can't come from the top down. It ain't going to work. It has to come from the bottom up, and that is the importance of organizing. So what are we doing here? Well, first of all, here's part of the organization. If you just tuned in and you're watching on Royce's X, please repost the link. Please repost the link to this podcast into your own social media page. Please, wherever you're watching, if you're watching on Facebook, repost it because we need to build an audience of politically aware and motivated people. And we're using this digital means, thank you, Tanner, for pointing out the power of this scientific technique, these digital means, to actually build a new political community. That's number one, is creating interest in Free People Radio and in candidates that support American nationalism and a preservation of traditional values, which include faith in God. Now, we're going to start a very concentrated and coordinated effort to get organized, to get people out to caucuses here in Minnesota in February of 2026. Minnesota is a caucus state, and you have some process in your state where people of goodwill can get involved in local politics. And all politics is local. We're going to start at the bottom and work up. We're not going to depend on the top to come to us because it's not going to get there. We got to do it in our local neighborhoods. So, what is organizing? What is community organizing? And any of you can become a community organizer. I never thought I would be. I remember when they were talking about Barack Obama. He's a community organizer. I go, what's that? This is back in 2008 when they're, how old were you in 2008?
I was 8.
Great. You didn't care.
No.
I was going, man, what's a community organizer? I really didn't know what they were talking about because Republicans wrote checks. They didn't organize. And that's the problem with the Republican Party. We need people that are going to get into their neighborhood. Now, how do you do that? Well, you live in an apartment or you live in a house, right? Meet your neighbors. Befriend your neighbors. You have and Richard Barris talked about this, door knocking is probably not the most effective means of organizing because people don't want to open their doors. But your family members, your friends, your co-workers, your neighbors, the people that know you by name, we got to talk to these people and organize them and bring them together. And it all goes down in the local area where you live called your precinct strategy, which is to know your neighbors, to talk to your neighbors about politics. It's very easy. Have them over for a barbecue and sit and talk to them. Sit there with a beer and talk. And, when I do this, I used to be quite controversial. I don't do this. I ask and listen now. What's important to you? I'm in the Republican Party. What is important? I want to know what things matter to you. And I want to be a listener. I want to be a listener and understand what people are thinking and make lists of people, email lists, digital lists for email so that I can contact people and send them information. I'm sure some of you have lists and you're sending out links to the Professor Penn podcast to all the people on your list, which I hope you do, because we never know who is going to become an organizer. All of you, I'm going to say everybody listening, I got people listening in Somaliland, in England, Australia, all over the world. Wherever you are, and we're going to talk about this in just a few minutes, this political contest between globalism and your neighborhood is going on everywhere all the time. Brazil, we're going to talk about Brazil at the end of the podcast, a perfect textbook case of nationalism and globalism and what happens when these two forces interact, and it's, like a thunderstorm. But you organize the people that you know. When I say organize them, first you befriend them and you get them on a list. There's all kinds of ways to get people on lists. You got to get together with them. Politics is a face-to-face deal. For example, you're invited. If you're in Minnesota or if you're in my district, SD 45, or even in SD 42 or 50, around this area, this coming Wednesday night, that would be tomorrow, I will be at the Devani's on Highway 7 in Minnetonka, and all who wish to come and organize are welcome to be there. And there will be people there, and we will organize them, and we will get them on lists, and we will talk to them. And Royce White will be there. And we're not going to harangue people politically. No, we're going to sit around and have some pizza and drink some beers, and I'm going to ask people, what is important to you? Because people don't want to be talked to. People want to be heard. Let me say this again. If you choose to be an organizer, the trap that I fell into, the mistake I made, is telling people what I believe. That's not going to work. I know it doesn't work. Pisses people off. No, what makes people want to hang around with you, both interpersonally or in politics, is when I listen to them. Let them talk. What did they say? God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. I can do all my talking here in an hour and a half twice a week. The rest of the time, I'm in listening mode. So we're going to meet with these people in what's called SD 45, Senate District 45, my neighborhood here in Minnesota, and I'm going to create lists of people, and the goal is to get them to caucus to teach these American citizens that are interested in preserving the democracy. Oh, no, the republic. As Abraham Lincoln pointed out, people are going to say that's a long time ago. No, it's not. All we've ever known is the present. That's it. The past is an illusion, and so is the future. I'm focused right here, right now on these words I'm sharing with you. And Abraham Lincoln, who for me is as alive today as he was when he was alive, because he's that kind of a figure, didn't talk about saving democracy. He talked about saving the republic. In other words, republicanism. Republicanism. We're going to organize the people. We're going to listen to them. We're going to get them on lists. We're going to communicate with them regular. We're going to have more events, 2 a month. We're going to do this. And we're going to get people, first off, on the list. Then we're going to talk to them. Well, how does the political party work? Because, the party, and I don't know if you've had this experience yet, the party does not want a young guy like you to know how things work.
Yeah.
Because if you know how it works, you're going to work it without them. No, they want to keep you in a corner under a lampshade, kind of stupid, hanging around, maybe writing a check, maybe doing some things for them, licking some envelopes, making some phone calls, until they have a chance to vet you out and figure out who you are. And you will only advance in the party if you support the party.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, we don't have to play that game. We don't have to tell people in the party what we think. We don't even have to tell each other what we think. All that matters is we're Republicans and we want to elect Republicans. We're trying to change the Republican Party from the globalist institution that it is, filled with shitbag lying politicians, to a party that's filled with sincere, honorable American citizens that are searching for truth together. People say, well, that's impossible. No, it's not. If I can imagine it, it's possible. We're going to disagree. For example, I got a disagreement going with Dan Schultz right now. I love Dan. He's great. He's an icon, and he doesn't listen or see everything that I'm doing. What Dan wants me to do is talk about political strategy for 3 hours a week with you. And I don't think that's going to make the audience grow. But we put in every podcast some kernel of wisdom about organizing. And today, you're invited to Devani's on Highway 7. We're going to have more events between now and caucus in February of 2026. I'd like to have 100, 150, 200 people committed in my Senate district to go to caucus and vote for each other. And then guess what? American citizens are going to control SD 45. I was on the phone with a political activist, a Republican, who said to me last night on the telephone that SD 45, where I live, is probably the most rhino district in the entire state of Minnesota. Great. Not a surprise to me. I live there. I know how insincere and how lying these people are. I've been dealing with them for 4 years. They're entitled to lie and to cheat. They're entitled to do that. And unless we have American citizens in the process, they're going to get away with it. They're going to continue to say one thing and do another. Perfect example. Unity. We want unity. And then Kathy Folk, who's leading SD 45, refused to support President Trump in the last election cycle. Is that unity, Kathy? Come on. You got to go. But she's only going to go if we get a whole new crop of people involved in SD 45. Same thing in 42. We got to get organized. Once we get this core of organizers in place, we can start working on converting our friends and neighbors. People say, oh, Minnesota's gone. It's a Democrat state. Nah, it's not. We just don't have activism from the people that believe in traditional values in the Republic. For some reason, the people that believe in traditional values in the Republic want to write a check and stay home and watch Fox News. I don't know why that is. Didn't work for me. I haven't turned Fox News on one time since they called Arizona for Biden in 2020. So I haven't watched Fox News in 5 years. I mean, not a second, because I know who these people are. I got a lot of friends. I'm in business, a lot of friends. They read the Wall Street Journal. I don't read that anymore. It is a globalist rag. And speaking of business, we could use your support. You can go to this is another way to support the movement. You can go to the Free People store at freepeopleradio.com. Please buy some coffee mugs, some t-shirts. Hey, we're not, Macy's, but when you buy a coffee mug from us, it helps us fund more content. You can go to TireGet.com. TireGet.com. Everything you need in tires is right there. The price is right. The service is good. Everything's going to work. I got more and more people from this community calling in and buying tires. And you can tell your friends, your kids to buy tires from TireGet.com. And that's going to help us expand the programming. We got on the slate right now. I want to start a religious program here on the channel. Why do I want to do that? Because we know there's an enormous number of Christians that don't vote. Some say 30%, some say 40%. You don't vote, you're Christian? Well, okay, great. You're a citizen of heaven. You've been sold a bill of goods. The bill of goods is you don't have to fight for faith. No. Go read Matthew. I didn't come to bring peace. I came with the sword. Read that. I think it's Matthew 10:34. I think so. You got to read. We get this curated version of Scripture, which cuts out all the parts where you got to work. The only part they leave in is love your neighbor as you love yourself, join the church, write us a check. That's not faith. That's community. There's a lot of benefit from that, but it's leaving a lot of the game in the locker room. We got to organize our religious communities. Why? Because they're ushering in this digital currency. They're ushering in a digital age. And the people that are ushering it in right now in the Trump administration, maybe a lot of them believe in God. I don't know them. But the people that came up with these ideas, they are not believers in faith. I mean, I don't dislike them because of that. They dislike me. I grew up around scientific people. I'm not anti-science. We're going to have these meetings, and let's say you're in Minnesota, or whatever state you're in, but let's say you're in Minnesota. and you're an SD 8 or you're an SD 25 or you're an SD 50 and you like this idea, get in touch with me. Go to support@TireGet.com. You know how to get in touch with me. I'm not hard to find. And just say, I'd like to organize an event for you in my Senate district. I was on the phone or on the texting last night with a, 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 a friend of mine who's in northern Minnesota. We're going to put an event on in October with 500 to 1,000 people. We're going to roll in. Royce and I are going to roll in. We're going to spend the day. We're going to organize those people. And when I say we're going to organize them, I mean, people are self-organizing, but there has to be a reason for them to get together, to make the list, to spread the movement. That's what we're trying to do. Just like a religion, republicanism is trying to spread its movement. And we're kind of in the up position right now. Let's make the most of the time we have together. So we're going to have these events. We're going to meet people face to face. We're going to make lists. We're going to organize the people. We're going to tell the people, how do these parties work? We're going to suggest, we're not going to tell people what to do, but we're going to suggest some ideas like, would you like to go to caucus? I'm not telling you to go to caucus. I'm saying, if you want to save the republic, but I cannot refrain from tendering to you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the republic they died to save. Nobody's asking you to die to save the republic. That's not what I'm asking you to show up at caucus so we don't have to die to save the republic. We still have an intact political process, which is corrupt, and it's only corrupt because the American citizens don't show up. If we show up in mass, the corruption's going to end very quickly. The reason there's corruption is we don't do it, and who shows up? Pimps and prostitutes show up. That's who shows up in politics. And then they wear suits, blue suits, with red, white, and blue ties, with American flag lapel pins, and they tell us that Royce White's unelectable. Well, they rob the citizens and allow the robbing of the citizens. And that's Democrat and Republican both, because politics right now is simply the theater of the military-industrial complex, as Frank Zappa said 40 years ago. And it's gotten worse, not better. So we got to get into these Senate districts, and whatever district you're in and you're listening to me, we will come. You organize the event, we will come. You bring the people. Royce can be the draw. Let's get the people in a room. Let's talk to them. Let's organize them. But let's, more than anything else, let's listen to them and let them know that there's a generation of political people coming in now that aren't going to tell you what to do. We want to know what you want us to do for you. And that brings to mind somebody that's down in Minnesota that's mad at me because I can't make magic happen overnight. Some of the requests that people make take time. That's another thing. We got to be patient. We have a very sick country. We have to be patient. It's not going to be healed overnight. That's when you're sick, they call you patient. Because really, most of the time when you're sick, to get better, all you have to do is be patient. President Trump is going to meet President Putin very soon in Alaska. I think it's Friday, actually, this week. My belief is if they're getting together, they've already cooked up a deal. And the deal is intended to bring an end to the war in Ukraine, or as I was brought up to call it, the Ukraine, because it was not a country when my family came to the United States from the Ukraine. It was like the Midwest. It was part of Russia. The Ukraine referred to a region in Russia. Well, now it's a country. Great. Who cooked that idea up? I don't know. It was a great idea. Didn't work very well because we have a mixture of groups in there, of Slavic groups. That's an inter-Slavic civil war. And the solution to this war, and Putin has already publicly announced that if Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, which are the eastern provinces of the Ukraine where the Russian speakers are, if this territory is ceded to Russia, the war is over. Of course, Zelensky jumps up and says, it's not going to happen. Well, then President Trump's going to say, and I'm sure he's already said to him, on the telephone, go ahead, get in the way of this. We're just going to cut off the weapons. And, I'm just going to tell you from my perspective, uh, we the people, through our elected representative, President Donald Trump, we're doing everything we can to get out of this European nightmare where we have been embroiled since 1914. We've been embroiled in a European nightmare since 1914, over 100 years, with millions of Americans killed and injured in trying to keep these people sorted out one from the other. I don't want to do it anymore. I know people get very mad at me when I say this. They have some belief that it's our job to keep this sorted out. I don't think so. I think these people need to sort it out for themselves. If we can't sort this out, I'll tell you what I'd like to see us do. I'd like to see us withdraw from Europe and withdraw from NATO. If you all want to have it out with the Russians, you French who attacked Russia in 1812, you Germans who attacked Russia in 1942, you English who attacked Russia in 1805, 1853, 1917. If you people want to continue this great game of competition, this Darwinian competition that you have going on there to see who's the baddest, hey, I'm not getting in the way of that. My name is Paul, and it's between y'all. You go at it. You go at it until the last man is standing. I want to be here in my neighborhood, taking care of my children, making a healthy economy for my people, building a healthy lifestyle for American citizens so we have longevity, compressed morbidity, economic freedom for all. And why are we out there getting involved in fights that aren't our? I don't know if you ever did this. Did you used to go to the bar when you were young and get in fights?
No. Well, I'm still young right now, but I do not get in
No, I
fights.
mean 18, 19, 20. Most people outgrow that by the time they're 24, 25, 26 years old.
Yeah, no.
But when I was 18, 19, we went to a place called the Libation Station every Friday night, and we were guaranteed a fight. And sometimes, if nobody insulted one of us in our group, we'd go stick up for somebody else in some other fight. I'm thinking to myself, this is not a very good way to spend Friday night because, Saturday you'd wake up, you'd be hungover and all beat up. And I just didn't see the value in it. It's no difference. Oh, there is a difference. It's the same thing, but a little different. Let me tell you what the difference is. Instead of knives and handguns, it's nuclear weapons. The Europeans are not supportive of this idea. But President Trump is going along his business, bringing peace to all kinds of problems. Could you please play number 3?
President Trump hosting the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan to sign a peace agreement out the White House today. The deal grants the U.S. exclusive access to develop a transit passage in the South Caucasus. It will be called the TRIP, short for the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. Armenia and Azerbaijan have been in conflict for nearly 4 decades. The deal also marks a setback for Russia, Moscow previously seeking a peace deal between the former Soviet republics.
Country of Armenia and Azerbaijan are committing to stop all fighting forever, open up commerce, travel, and diplomatic relations, and respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, so importantly. And I just spent a lot of time with these two men. I think they're going to have a great relationship. You want to know the truth?
President Trump also signed bilateral agreements with both countries to expand cooperation in energy, trade, and technology.
Did you know there was a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
I feel embarrassed to say that I don't even know what those countries are.
That's like a lot of people that are listening. But there's actually been a war there. This is an area. Could you put the map up, please?
Yeah.
This is in the these are former provinces or states within the I sent it in that email to you.
Yeah.
Send that email.
That extra one?
Yep.
Gotcha.
These are Armenia and Azerbaijan are two ancient countries that are in the South Caucasus. You can see Armenia. Armenia is a Christian country. About 97% of the population is Christian. Azerbaijan is a Muslim country. About 97% of its citizens are Muslims. President Trump talked about the TRIP, this corridor for peace. It's a very interesting mess here. If you look on the very southern part of Azerbaijan, you'll see a blue line and a red line. That is the economic corridor to which President Trump was referring. If you look at the map, the way this map got drawn, Armenia actually cuts off a piece of Azerbaijan, and there was a war over a province inside of Azerbaijan where there is some Armenian Christian people, and this war has been, simmering along here for a long time. You can see this is close to Turkey, just north of Iran. There's Russia and Georgia. There was an ongoing war here. It was called the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. President Trump now has signed with these two leaders a peace treaty. And anytime peace breaks out, there's more peace everywhere. Just like anytime there's more tyranny everywhere. So they can criticize President Trump all they want. And I certainly am kind of in a quiet way criticizing this rollout of these digital assets. But nonetheless, there's a lot of good things going on. And so here's a president that's bringing about a peace, and we're about to hear a peace deal on the Ukraine. I don't think Putin and Trump would get together to just sit and look at each other. That's a very high, it's just high drama, big theater to have these two leaders get together. And I think that there's already in place the framework for an end to this war if people want to quit fighting and dying. If the Ukraine thing is quieted down, I'm certain that President Trump will turn all of his interest into dealing with the Middle East. President Benjamin Netanyahu announced this past week that the Israeli military is going to occupy and administrate all of the Gaza Strip, but not forever, according to Netanyahu. And, that brings to mind the three great lies, which I can't say because they're rather scatological. First of all, what's forever? But the Israelis are going to take control of Gaza. And look what they're taking control of. Could you put up this picture of the Gaza Strip just so you can see? Can you zoom in on that so everybody get a good look at it, or is that the best we can do? Maybe you can get that. There you go. That's what they're taking control of. That's what's left of Gaza. Every structure destroyed. And so that's what's going on over there. In the meantime, Israel's far-right national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, led hundreds of settlers in a storming of the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex this past Sunday, where they loudly performed Jewish prayer under heavy police guard. This was an attempt to antagonize the Muslim worshipers. There's been a many decade deal that Jewish people don't go up on the mount where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is located, that the Jewish worshipers stay down by the Western Wall. But you know what? Hey, let's go piss in people's post toasties and see how that turns out. In the meantime, put this picture up. Our political leaders are in their recess period going right over to Israel, trip sponsored by AIPAC. There's 20 Republicans that are there this week, and then next week there's 20 Democrats because, hey, all hands across the water, bipartisanship. And you look at there, and there's President Benjamin Netanyahu, and guess who's sitting right at his right side there? You recognize that face?
It's Tommy.
It's Tom Emmer from CD6 in Minnesota, right there at the right side. That means he's the most important guy in the room besides the prime minister. There he is, taking all those folks over on an AIPAC-sponsored trip. That'd be the American Israel Political Action Committee. I actually was at a event with Royce White in 2024 in front of the Federal Reserve, where Royce said the Jewish lobby. He said there's a Jewish lobby, and Jews and Christians alike accused him of anti-Semitism. for saying the Jewish lobby. And there it is, the American Israel Political Action Committee sponsoring trips of our elected representatives over to Israel. Now, let me think this through. Could it be that the American Israel Political Action Committee has nothing to do with Judaism? I guess that's possible, in which case Royce's statement could be perceived as being anti-Semitic. But if, in fact, the American Israel Political Action Committee has some relationship with Judaism, as they interpret it, then all he was doing was reciting the facts, that there is a Jewish lobby. Anybody out there want to call me an anti-Semite because I'm calling out AIPAC? And what am I calling them out for? I don't want to see my country involved in foreign wars. That's the way things have been done around this world since 1913 with the Federal Reserve. Wow, that allowed for war making. Printing money that you don't have, it allows for war making. Previous to this period, if a country went to war, it had to choose guns over butter because there was limited resources. But when you can just counterfeit money, hey, you can have both. You can have all the guns you want and all the butter you want to keep your people happy. What a great money-making scheme this is. I don't like this scheme, and I'll tell you why. There's a cost to it. Here's the cost. You ready? We lose our freedom. That's fundamental, because empire and war cannot coexist with self-governance. Number two, the people are inventory, and they die in these wars. The price of this economic organization is the death of American citizens. I don't want to see that continue. And I know there's a lot of Republicans that are going to go back and say, oh, you're an asshole, Penn. There's a missile gap. There's a digital gap. There's an AI gap. There's a mineshaft gap. The only gap is you have no faith. Well, let's play number 4.
The most violent fighting since Bashar al-Assad has broken out in Latakia in northwest Syria. Armed men still loyal to Assad face off with soldiers of Syria's new Islamist government, and civilians are trapped in between. Latakia is an Alawite stronghold, a religious minority to which Assad's family belongs. Syria's new soldiers filmed themselves whilst they humiliated these Alawite men, slapping them and calling them pigs. Dozens of summary executions were recorded in several locations along the coast. Bodies littered the streets as terrified families searched for their loved ones. According to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, more than 1,000 people have been killed in 2 days of violent clashes.
It's really an act of vengeance against a community that's considered to have been the pillar of Assad's power. It's also a religious hatred. For Islamists or jihadists, the Alawites are heretics that must be eradicated.
The question remains, were these atrocities ordered by Syria's new authorities, or were they carried out by the country's most radical factions? Ahmed al-Shara, who has been promising a peaceful transition, denounced the crimes.
Anyone who commits violence against civilians will be held accountable.
Can you stop it, please?
It is our duty to...
Now, this guy was in charge of Al-Qaeda in Syria. Man, he looks good in a suit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's looking good. The name of his organization is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, which the West has pitched its citizens as a diversity-friendly jihad. Diversity-friendly. I'm not kidding you. This was the pitch. In the meantime, why I'm playing this is, well, we're buying this thing. President Trump met with him and said he's a good-looking guy. Remember that?
Yeah.
He said he's good-looking. He's no longer on the most wanted list. There used to be a $10 million bounty on this guy's head right here in the good old U.S. of A. Now, we're all good with it. Why? Because he's a Sunni Muslim. And right over to his east is Iran, and they are Shia Muslims. And what better way to control the region than make people hate each other? And what is this guy doing? He's standing up in front of the world and saying, boy, you better not be killing each other here. You better not be perpetrating any genocides or any ethnic cleansing. We don't go for that. In the meantime, his boys, you saw him on film,
Yeah.
are wiping out the Druze, for example, the Alawites, the Shias. The Druze because they're friendly with the Jews, because, the Druze are allied with the Jews in Israel. The Alawites because they're Shias aligned with the Iranians. And then there's the Kurds. They're separatists. They want their own country. So these folks are going around, when they were slapping those guys on the back, what do you think happened next?
Oh yeah, I don't even want to. I was thinking, I was like, doesn't that just make your hand hurt? You just slapping the back of their head, and then I thought, oh wait, that's just the prep.
Yeah, that's just a little humiliation.
Yeah,
Just crazy. So that's what we're doing. And who funded this guy? Well, the Turks funded him. And who funds the Turks? Well, that'd be us, because the Turks are the second largest military in NATO, behind guess who? That'd be we the people.
the Turks are the second.
They are the second largest military in NATO. The Turks they like it. It's good to them. They had an empire, the Ottoman Empire. That was the Turks. The first time I went to Turkey, I went to a meeting in a beautiful office right in the capital city of Ankara, dressed in a suit, beautiful. Met a guy who was politically ambitious, and we talked. And within the first 5 minutes, he told me every Turk is willing to die for Turkey. Right now, he says, if you ask me to die for Turkey, I'll die right now. I'm sitting there with him. I'm thinking, what's going to happen next? You think I'm kidding you, right?
No, I
Yeah.
don't. It's
I thought to myself, what a strange way to say hello to some Americans. I'm willing to die for my country right now, because I was there with an American delegation. And then we went, and would you like to meet the president of our country, President Erdogan? He's just down the block. We'll just go over and knock on the door. He'd like to meet you. And I said, nah, I don't think so. I don't have this cleared with the State Department, and I think there's rules about this that I don't want to violate. I can meet with you, but to go meet the president of your country? Ooh, no, I don't think so. Oh, no, we really want to take you. I said, I don't think it's a good idea. Maybe next time I'll get clearance from Clarence before I come over. I was there many times. Turkey's an interesting place. Maybe we're going to talk about Brazil here in a minute. Maybe we'll do Turkey soon. Anyhow, this Turkish-backed Sunni Muslim jihadist is now the president of Syria, and they are cleansing the groups in the country that do not agree with them. So while we here in SD45 are looking for more participants, what they're doing in Syria is just eliminating their competition. Crazy, isn't it? Here's a biggie, a real biggie. President Trump has directed the military to start kinetic operations. In other words, they're going to start cleansing foreign drug cartels operating in Mexico. Now, this has been presaged by great movies called Sicario and Sicario 2, more movies that you might enjoy watching, with Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin. I mean, these movies are badass. But they were just telling us about something that's been going on for a long time at a very low level. Now, President Trump is taking it up all the way, and they're just going to start killing these drug cartel people. Okay. Let me tell you how to kill the drug cartel people. You ready?
Stop doing drugs.
Stop doing drugs.
Yeah.
Find faith. Quit buying drugs. I was there has to be demand. We're working the supply side. That's not going to eliminate drugs. I guess the government's going to provide it.
Yeah.
I guess it's really a battle over who's getting the cash.
Yeah, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, though, because I used to think that. I used to think, like, I was a supporter of legalizing marijuana because of that one factor that was like, you would really hit the black market heavy if we started doing it. But then they put such high taxes on it that all they did was really empower the black market, because still to this day, the black market is way cheaper than getting a dispensary.
Strangely, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for informing me.
Sorry that I know a little bit about that.
It's okay.
but-
I'm not judgmental. It's legal after all, as long as, cigarettes, there's a trade in cigarettes that avoids taxes.
Even vapes. I never delved into it, but when I was leaving high school, that's when disposable vapes got really popular, and there were people that were ordering it off of like Chinese websites where they get the shells and then they would make their own juice and stuff, and they'd sell them for like $10 a pop in high school. So even that, like even nicotine in vapes, there's a whole black market for that as well.
Well, I think President Trump believes that he'll be interdicting a supply of drugs that are intentionally concocted to kill Americans. I just had somebody I know, their grandson, very young man, 22, 23, died of a probably, don't have a they believe he died of a fentanyl overdose at 22, 23 years old. Awful. His family's devastated. I think President Trump is saying to himself, this is being done on purpose. You know, it's a little strange. You smoke a bowl of dope and it's laced with fentanyl and you die. That's not exactly drug demand.
Yeah.
That is called murder, state murder, because there is, good evidence that these fentanyl precursors come from China, and the Chinese are not interdicting this. And that's why there are extra taxes on Canada, extra taxes on China. President Trump is trying to interdict this flow of fentanyl and fentanyl-laced drugs because they're so prone to kill people. And President Trump believes it's not an accident. But that still leaves unexamined, why would a 22-year-old smoke some shit that he doesn't know what it is?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, at least for the smoking part, that is a false thing. There are studies that the chemical compound of fentanyl gets destroyed by direct flame. So there's no case, nobody's ever died from smoking marijuana laced with it. But Coke is the biggest thing, and especially with like people in my cohort, I'm very happy that I stayed away from it. I really didn't, it never really piqued my interest. But in early 20s, going to raves, going to concerts, Coke is a huge thing. And right now that's where most people are dying from it is cocaine. I had a friend personally that passed away from that. He went to Colorado, did some Coke and laced with fentanyl, keeled over.
Thank you for informing me. I'm out of the scene.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So thank you.
Yeah, it was a discussion with me and my mom. So like I looked into it because I know that, yeah, there's just different drugs with the temperatures and everything. You can't just burn drugs and make it work. It doesn't work that way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm
More you know.
I'm not partaking and I'm not going to raves. It'd be a little strange if a guy like me walked in there.
Oh, you would fit right in. You'd be surprised on who's at raves.
Really?
Oh yeah, there's some old heads like you.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, Grateful Dead people.
My son.
Yeah.
In his
well, he's one of the creators though. He makes the music. Those
Right.
guys are always, or I won't say always, but most of the time they're the sober ones, So don't be worried about your son.
You think so, huh?
I like to believe. I mean, how are you up there making that kind of music high on drugs?
My son's very good at this, and he's got a pretty big international career.
Yeah.
But Jacob, congratulations. My son just had his first child.
Oh, really?
I'm a granddad for the first time.
Oh, congratulations.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, congratulations, Jacob, if you're watching. Love your music, man.
We should send him this. Why don't we send it to him so he knows we're talking about him? But I have a granddaughter, Zuri Moon Penn. Boy, my grandfather would say, "Was ist Zuri?" That's what my grandfather would say. Anyhow, inside joke, Jacob. Jacob bears the name of my grandfather, by the way. That's the way we do it around that campfire. If somebody died, they got to die first. There's no juniors in the religious part of Judaism. No juniors. There's no Don Jr. You could only get the name of a grandfather or father if they'd passed away. And that's what happened when Jacob was born. My grandfather, Yaakov, had passed away, and I gave Jacob his name. I was very close to my grandfather, actually. He was very important in transmitting to me the old ways. He was the one that told me how the relatives died back in the Ukraine. Back in the Ukraine. Spoke Yiddish, prayed 3 times a day, wore a yarmulke, worked his ass off, didn't care about money, cared about faith. Okay, speaking of money, let's play number 5.
There has been some confusion. So we've got a tariff of, what, 50% on Brazil now, I think. And so if someone here, an importer, wants to buy Brazilian products today or tomorrow and import them, they're going to pay 50% to the Treasury. And so who writes that check?
Well, a couple of things. First, we could have substitutions, so there's very little that only comes from Brazil. It could come from Argentina, it could come from...
right, but assuming it does come from Brazil, say, or it comes from any country with a tariff, who writes the check to the Treasury?
Well, the check is written to the person who receives it at the dock in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. The check is written by the person who receives it at the dock. So the tariff is paid in this country by the importer, is that right?
But the Brazilian exporter could decide that they want to keep market share. They could lower their price so that the full 50% of the tariff, say,
right, they could eat part of the cost. They could eat part of the tariff too.
Which is what we've seen.
Okay. But the check is written by the importer, right, at the dock.
Yeah, and then the importer can pass it on or not.
I got a kick out of looking at the Dow futures in the corner there, 44,000. I remember when the Dow was 4,000 during the financial crisis.
What time?
2008.
Oh, yeah?
10 times. 10 times increase since then. So, a lot of people running around this country thinking they're geniuses, genius investors. That's called inflation. That's why that stock market has performed like that. And that inflation is because we have a baked-in structural deficit every year of between $1 and $2 trillion in a good year. And we've gone from 2000 and Bush, which was like a 3 or 4, $5-6 trillion national debt. We're at 37 trillion now. And as long as we have that debt, there are those that say it doesn't matter. No, it matters for a lot of reasons. We'll have to keep borrowing money to finance the cost of that debt and that deficit. As long as we're borrowing that money, we're going to continue to have expansion of the money supply. We're going to continue to have inflation. So now, okay, who pays for the tariffs? I do. You do. You pay for them. You have to pay for them because we don't have a balanced budget. It is a revenue-raising tax scheme. We needed more tax revenue. It is not a progressive tax. It's a regressive tax. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. If you buy something, you're paying the tariff. And here's how you do it. You go down to your box store, Walmart, Costco, Sam's, wherever you go, and you buy something. You look at the box. It's made in Vietnam. There's a 20% reciprocal tariff on Vietnam. It's not going to kick in for a while, but downstream it's going to kick in. So 20% of the importer's cost, if it costs the importer $100, the importer pays $20 to the government at the dock, as Secretary Bessent was saying. Then the importer sells it into the supply chain, and it keeps getting marked up. So that $100 item at the dock might be a $180 item when you go to buy it at Costco. Maybe a $280 item. I don't know. It depends on the item. But you're paying that tax when you buy that item. You don't have to buy it, as Secretary Bessent said. You could substitute another item that was lower cost. That's also true. And there's offsets because that $100 item before this started might have cost an importer $110. And the supplier offshore lowered the price to mitigate the cost of that tariff because they wanted to maintain their market share. And that's going on. That is for real. But sooner or later, these tariffs are going to hit the economy. Prices will go up. That's not long-term inflation. That's a one-time reset. The economy will reset around these reciprocal tariffs. Cost of goods sold will increase. They will. Well, what is your option or your alternative to that? just continue to borrow money? We're going to have to cut spending. There doesn't seem to be any appetite for that as of yet.
Yeah.
Self-governance is not yet broken out. The kind of self-governance that would say, you know what, the way to reduce healthcare costs is for people to be healthier. We're just starting to talk about stuff like that. I mean, just insane. And they hate Secretary Kennedy. They hate him. They call him a kook, a crazy man. And really, all he's really saying is you can stay in relatively good shape and compress your morbidity. Now, if you're already old like me and you're fat, it's hard to lose that weight. I get it. I get it. I know it's hard. I struggle with it myself. I know it. It can be done. We can take upon ourselves the self-governing of improving our well-being so we don't have to buy all kinds of medical services. It's a new idea. Wouldn't you say that's kind of a new idea? That's not people's idea right now.
No.
Get sick, go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
Do people in your generation, if they have sniffles, go to the doctor?
No, most of us go, "Oh, I don't have health insurance, so let's hope this isn't anything serious."
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. So then what do? Vote for health care for all so they can go to the doctor when they have sniffles?
No, I mean, I guess I don't know about that. I do know that it's a huge conversation. Like, a lot of my cohort support RFK. Even people that are more left leaning and don't like Trump at all, they're really happy that RFK is in there because we all are coming to the conclusion that our food is poisoning us. The reason sometimes some people struggle so hard to lose weight is because what we're putting into our bodies is just, I don't know the difference. I don't know what it is, but I hear a bunch of people talk about our bread versus bread overseas and how they went on a trip and they lost all this weight while they kept eating bread. But then here it's like, good luck losing weight if you're eating bread in your diet.
I'm intense about this because I was 180 pounds in third grade. I had a
Big boy.
36-inch husky pants when I was 9 years old. So I understand the struggle with weight, and I have a lot of insight into it. We just don't eat well. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really the bottom line. And we eat too much because we're sedentary. And a lot of disease is related to obesity and all the hormonal changes that happen when we become obese. I'm even afraid to talk about this stuff on YouTube. I want to piss YouTube off.
Yeah,
But I think YouTube wants people to be healthy.
I would hope.
I hope.
Yeah,
Well,
but
we're not giving any prescriptions. We're just saying that one of the ways to mitigate healthcare costs is to create a healthier population. And that is an issue of the food supply, which is, starting to be changed. But more than that, it's education. I mean, I don't want to get too weird about this, but there's something even deeper than the food supply. And that's the education about how to be healthy, which they could teach to every kindergartner through senior high school instead of some of the other things that we teach.
yeah, because I remember when I was in high school, I remember like our gym class. There were some students that like, you do the warm up and you just be running for about 15 minutes around the gym doing laps, and there'd be easily like 5 to 10 people that would just walk the entire time. The teacher would never get on them and they would get passing grades and everything. I just kind of laughed at that. Like,
Oh, I
what?
told the story. My first day in 7th grade at Highland Park Junior High School in St. Paul, Minnesota, there was two athletic, they called them Phi Ed teachers.
Yeah.
I remembered because it was so jarring. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Dick Fury.
Dick Fury.
Dick Fury. And the first day, take your shirts off. Of course, I was a husky kid. Okay, we're going to run a mile. And it was a race. I even remember who won the race. This is a long time ago. Gary Jones was the fastest kid in that 7th grade class. And I was pulling up the end of the camp there, and Mr. Fury was screaming at me and swearing at me. And I thought to myself, this is not going to be the future of my life.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, I was running with the track team. And I lost, I don't know, 50 pounds, probably.
Yeah.
So it can be done. Now, that's a very negative way of doing it with name calling and intimidation. You know, there are very positive ways to get these things done. Or shall I say more positive ways to get them done? But I'm from the old school, and I respond to getting beat on.
Yeah, I
'Cause
think there is a little bit of a natural thing. Like, there's obviously a point of going overboard, but doesn't the Bible say something about iron sharpens iron? And like, I heard someone break that down that if you set two chunks of iron next to each other, they're not just gonna make each other better, it's grinding. And that's a very, very uncomfortable, you know, if you put it in the human perspective,
it's uncomfortable.
it's uncomfortable.
It was.
Sometimes you need to be told.
It was, but it motivated me, and it's made my life much healthier. And I don't.
So it even goes deeper down to a psychological thing that we as humans need to stop. Not all the time when someone is saying something like constructive to us, it's not always out of hate or malice. Sometimes it's out of care.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
You're kicking it this week, man.
Thanks, man. I'm trying.
That's great.
I'm trying.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Where does coffee come from?
Africa, right?
How about South America?
Yeah, South America. Okay.
Does Brazil have anything to do with coffee? Brazilian coffee?
Yeah, I believe so.
It is.
Okay.
Brazilian coffee. And, you know, this whole thing with Secretary Besson talking with Gene Robinson of the Washington Post was about Brazil, because we import a lot of coffee from Brazil, and President Trump has imposed a 50% tax on Brazil. Okay, that's a deal killer right there. That is mean. You go, why would you do that, President Trump? What is going on in Brazil? Well, Brazil, just this last week, placed a political leader there, a former president, Jair Bolsonaro, under house arrest. And Bolsonaro is a Trump-like figure in Brazil. Brazil had a communist president in the early part of the 2000s. His name was Lula. Lula, they just call him Lula. I think like from 2001 to 2008, something like that. And then his handpicked successor, a woman named Dilma Rousseff, took over. Guess what? Her presidency ended in a scandal. Lula, he went to jail for corruption. And then Bolsonaro won somewhere around 2018. He became the president for 4 years. And Bolsonaro is a traditional values, religious, anti-abortion, pro-nationalist, anti-globalist. He's as Trumpish as you can get. And let's play number 6.
Jair Bolsonaro has been left in a serious but stable condition in hospital. This after being stabbed while drumming up support ahead of next month's vote. Hospital officials say it could take 2 months for him to recover. Owen Barnell reports.
On the streets of Sao Paulo, it's turning ugly. Brazil's left and right are at each other's throats, anger flaring by a candlelit vigil for stabbed far-right frontrunner Jair Bolsonaro. To his supporters, their man is now a hero and a shoo-in for election in 2 months' time.
They made Bolsonaro a martyr. I think the left shot itself in the foot because with this attack, Brazilians will simply end up electing him.
It was while on the campaign trail that Bolsonaro was stabbed. Rushed to hospital with severe damage to abdomen and intestines, he barely made it in time.
He went in for emergency surgery because of heavy bleeding from a vein in the abdomen. The length of hospitalization is unknown. It could be anywhere from 1 week to 10 days. Then there's a recovery period.
Bolsonaro is currently second in the polls for Brazil's presidential elections. Former President Lula da Silva is the front runner, but he is also behind bars on corruption charges. For years, Bolsonaro has been the figure on the extreme right of Brazil's politics. A member of the so-called Bullets, Beef and Bible caucus, he is known for riling the country's left wing. Whether the stabbing will derail a promising presidential run is still unclear, though with the former army captain bedbound, campaigning will be impossible until he recovers.
Brazil's a very important country, 212 million people, over $2 trillion of GDP. It's the most significant country politically and militarily and economically in South America. And it is a hotbed of competition between globalism and nationalism. And you can see led to an attempted assassination of the nationalist candidate. When they say leftist, they mean globalist. And that stabbing occurred on September 6th, 2018. Bolsonaro won that election, and he went to seek re-election. Lula got out of jail, went to jail, and got out. And now let's play number 7. See how it turned out.
A spectacular comeback that he himself styled a renaissance. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on Sunday night was elected president of Brazil for the 3rd time.
They tried to bury me alive, and here I am.
Lula, who had previously held office from 2003 to 2011, edged out the far-right incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. It was a knife-edge result to close off what had been an often acrimonious election. The 77-year-old Lula had bounced back after a torrid few years. The leftist and former trade union leader was convicted of corruption and money laundering in 2017 and spent more than a year in jail. His convictions were later overturned by Brazil's Supreme Court, who found the judge who oversaw the trial to be biased. On Sunday, Lula saluted what he called a historic win.
And today, there is one big winner, the Brazilian people. On this historic October 30th, most of the Brazilian people made clear they wanted more and not less democracy.
But it was a hard-fought victory. President Jair Bolsonaro had closed the gap significantly in recent months, with the final result closer than anyone had anticipated. Though he goes down in history as the first Brazilian president to fail to win re-election, the former army captain still commands huge support in the country, despite a largely controversial term in office. Lula's win sparked emotional celebrations among his supporters across the country. He will return to the Planalto Palace in Brasilia 12 years on from vacating it on January 1st, the day of his inauguration.
So here we got this very fight that's going on in your neighborhood between globalists, rhinos, and nationalists, between a Kamala Harris-type character, Lula, and a Trump-like character, Bolsonaro, in this very important country. And Trump has long been sympathetic and supportive of Bolsonaro, who lost that election. And that election had allegations that it was a rigged election, very much like the allegations were made about the 2020 election here in the United States of America. And look at this for some similarity. Let's play number 8.
On Sunday, protesters in Brasilia who support former President Jair Bolsonaro and reject his election loss in October marched to the center of power in the capital, Brasilia, and they stormed 3 of the most important buildings in the country, if not the most important buildings: the Supreme Court, Congress, and the Presidential Palace. They trashed all 3 of the buildings. They tossed furniture, they overturned desks, they hurled computers and printers to the ground, they destroyed some of Brazil's treasured artworks, and really just ran amok and caused havoc in the capital. These were Bolsonaro supporters who refused to accept his election loss. Now, Bolsonaro had already laid the ground for an uprising of this sort. We had had political analysts warning of it for months. He had been straining against other institutions, particularly the Supreme Court, and at one point threatened to disobey any rulings from one specific justice. He sowed doubt about election results and said that the electronic voting system that's been in use since 1996 and has never had any proof of fraud was susceptible to fraud. Now, he didn't present any evidence, but his supporters lapped this up, and many of them continued believing that there had been fraud after the election.
Obviously, to a number of people, this all sounds familiar because there are a number of striking parallels with the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. On January 6th, you had a huge mass of demonstrators who had been riled up by false claims about elections on social media, who were trying to stop the inauguration of somebody who was defeating their populist leader. And they stormed the U.S. Capitol complex. They rifled through the desks of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress. They had banners with, wild conspiracy theories about computer codes and voting machines that were rigged against them and stuff like that. Both Trump and Bolsonaro are similar on paper. They both are populist candidates who rose up from the right against this kind of perceived establishment that has failed the people. And they promised that they would shake up the establishment, more or less overthrow the existing order and fix a corrupt system. The parallels are certainly striking and important to understand, but it's also important not to get too caught up in the similarities, because these are two different countries and these are two different events. One of the big differences, of course, is Brazil's got a much, much higher level of dissatisfaction with its political system than the United States. It's obviously a poorer country, a developing country, huge problems with endemic corruption. Lula himself, who had been president previously, had been convicted in a giant money laundering scandal. So there's all sorts of extra kind of problems and pressures in Brazil that the United States really does not face.
Well, President Trump certainly doesn't see those distinctions. He sees a battle between nationalism and globalism. He sees Lula as a communist. He's a self-avowed communist. He sees Bolsonaro as aligned with the Trump agenda. So President Trump, unlike all the other tariffs, which are economic and revenue driven, this thing on Brazil, this is political and personal. And so what we have as a president, in President Trump, who is willing to wield American power in a way that is absolutely unprecedented in my lifetime. And Brazil is a perfect example where President Trump has intervened to force political change upon Brazil. Because 50%, that's a heavy tax. That's going to impact the Brazilian economy in a very significant way. Of course, drive Brazilia's leadership into the arms of the Chinese and the Russians. But be that as it may, what President Trump is trying to do is to create the conditions for a Bolsonaro comeback. Bolsonaro, who now is languishing in house arrest and would not even be allowed to run for president. Such is the political and judicial system in Brazil. Well, we covered a lot of ground tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in early.
Of course.
We got a guest for Thursday. We're going to leave that as a surprise. Please tune in. Very glad you're with us. Please repost the links. Please help us grow the community. If you'd like to get involved in some of the community work that we're doing, contact me. Support@TireGet.com. You can go to TireGet and buy your tires. Send your friends, your family, your neighbors, your kids to TireGet. Fund the movement. Thank you very much for doing so. The Free People Store. We're so glad to be with you. I will tell you that the movement is growing. We are tirelessly working towards bringing about political change here in Minnesota and in every state. And as we started at the beginning of the podcast talking about change, and Tanner, you were so insightful to bring up that quote from Kaczynski.
Yeah.
The change that we're going through is going to devastate the traditional values upon which this republic stands. If and only if we, the people, do not participate. On that note, I want to wish you good night, well-being, and I look forward to seeing you again Thursday.
Have a good night, everybody.